every sensor soar in search of answers.
Following up on any sort of success is never easy, especially in the entertainment business. And I don't think anyone else knows that more than Guerrilla Games, developers of Killzone. The question posed for the third entry of Killzone is simple. The inquiry is whether or not Guerrilla Games can make the lightning strike twice and keep Killzone's quality as high as it was the last time around.
Is that understood?
Yes, sir!
Sergeant Velasquez, are you too stupid to follow a direct order to shut the f*** up?
Captain?
The story of Killzone 3 picks up not 5 seconds after the second game ends. The leader of the Hellgast, Visari, has been killed due to a member of the ISA's military being unable to control his emotions. You play as Thomas Sevchenko, and now you need to get the heck off of Helgen. A power struggle is about to break out, and you're about to be caught right in the middle of it. After the beginning of the game, you're essentially thrown into what amounts to the normal archetype for an action game storyline. You and your supporting cast have the simple objective of fighting your way through enemy forces and going a wild ride in the process. As for the characters though, there's not really a whole lot of development for the main cast of heroes. They never really go beyond the archetype of being the awesome elite soldier. Well, for the named characters anyway. However, when it comes to action stories, the characters serve their purpose. That purpose is to do everything that the player can do in-game and just as awesome. That's not to say that Killzone 3 has a mediocre storyline though. The heroes don't get that much of a development, but the villains are the star of the show. Like I said earlier, the key to Killzone 3's storyline is the power struggle that happens after Visari has been killed. The two main characters of the enemy military are Jorhan Stahl, who is voiced by Malcolm McDowell, and Admiral Orlok, voiced by Ray Winstone. To be quite honest, you couldn't have picked two better actors. Mostly because the two of them are both very good at playing irredeemable jerks. From a presentation standpoint, Killzone 3 is fantastic. The series has a pedigree for having great visuals, and the third game certainly doesn't disappoint in that regard. Every environment is detailed, and there's plenty of variation to keep things fresh in the environments. You end up going from jungles to cities to the Arctic, so there's quite a few good things to be able to see here, and it's all presented very well. The music of Killzone 3 is excellent as well, and it sees the return of composer Joris Deman, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, who has composed every single game in the series up to this point. As anyone would expect from a score made for a sci-fi military video game, the soundtrack is very epic and booming, but one thing I can see from Joris' score that I don't see from a lot of other composers is the application. In some other FPS games, there are moments where the soundtrack sort of takes over the action, it's way too booming, and that's what I call the Marty O'Donnell syndrome. Thankfully, Killzone doesn't do that, and it never breaks immersion. And that little thing is essentially what helps tie all the presentation elements together rather than simply overwhelming the player. Gameplay in Killzone 3 has the same foundation as the second game. At its core, it's a first-person shooter, but it's primarily cover-based. If you spend too much time out in the open, you're going to turn into Helgan Department of Agriculture approved mincemeat. What I do like about Killzone 3's gameplay style is that the control style doesn't disapprove of hip firing. It's not always necessary to use ADS aiming, which makes hectic firefights much less frustrating. There's also quite a bit of weapon variation in-game with your standard military pick and mix, coupled with some neat sci-fi weapons, including one that I'm sure is an homage to the BFG from Doom. Also, thankfully, the campaign knows how to pace itself. It's not just wall-to-wall cover-based shooting like games like Medal of Honor or Kane and Lynch. There are little things that are thrown in between, like a stealth section here or there, or a vehicle section, and so on and so forth, to keep things fresh rather than just you looking down the sights of your assault rifle the whole time. Though I had quite a bit of fun with the campaign, I'd be lying if I said that the multiplayer wasn't good too. Killzone 3's multiplayer plays like a mix between Team Fortress 2 and Battlefield, which is definitely not a bad thing. It's a class-based team system that has 3 primary game modes. The classes that you get are the Infiltrator, which is like the spy from TF2 minus the French accent, Tactician, which can create new spawn points, Medic, Engineer, and Marksman, aka Sniper. The 3 modes are Guerrilla Warfare, which is your team deathmatch, Warzone, which is a mode with constantly shifting objectives like assassinating a certain player or delivering propaganda, and Operations, which is a territory-based mode, which also has an interesting opening and closing cutscene for each match. There are also upgrades to attain both in-game through specific types of kills and through unlocks after each match. It all blends together with several well-designed maps to allow balance in the battlefield, which is paramount to any multiplayer. When everything's said and done, Killzone 3 is a fun, well-paced shooter. It's not something that's going to set the world on fire, but at the same time it's still very well made, and you can have a lot of fun with it. This isn't the sort of game that's going to bring in people who don't like shooters or anything of that nature, but if you have a PS3 and you love FPS games, this is one that I would recommend to just about anyone who owns the console. So once the title hits on Tuesday, be sure to pick it up for a good time. For the full write-up, go to blisteredthumbs.net.